evening and welcome to Information Please, your Peoria Public Library, bringing you information about your library and your community. And this evening my guest is Steve Tarter, who is bringing back the famous Film Noir Festival. We sort of missed it for a couple of years now, but here we go again. Hi, Steve.
Hi, good to be here.
Yes.
Yeah, we can't be without Film Noir.
No, we kind of had a little lapse there because we did always work in conjunction with the Apollo Theater.
Right. And I'm no longer at the Apollo, and of course they're still running movies and doing fine over there. But I thought, I got out of it, and I thought, well, folks might still want to. And I do get asked sometimes, hey, what about those crime movies?
Yeah.
I thought, well, the library has got this new,
new
place, new facility right downtown, and so that's what we're going to do in March.
Well, it's exciting, and we love that. A lot of movie lovers that come to the library because, okay, we all got big TVs at home, or most of us do, but most of us don't have that kind of sound and that big a screen and that kind of projection.
Right.
So,
well, plus
it's just nice to make it an event to go where you're not getting up and answering the phone and that kind of thing.
And I think too the one thing that I like, and I think we've set it up for this time, is these are matinees.
Yes.
So I know March, you don't know what the weather is in March. It could be windy, it could be cold, it could be nice, but March at Saturdays 2 o'clock. Throughout the month, there'll be a movie down at the library, and
it's free.
And it's free. You can't beat that, and you can get a book or do something else while you go down there. And I think these movies are always great to remember, and so we can elaborate more on that. But
they're a lot of fun. Tell us a little bit about film noir for those who don't know.
Well, film noir, the term kind of came from the French, who I guess this was the outpouring of Hollywood during World War II. Of course, the flow of movies stopped between this country and Europe. Well, when that war was over, here came the movies that had been made, and the French looked at them, or somebody in France, a critic obviously, somebody on a newspaper with a keen eye, and they call the film noir, a black film or dark film, whatever you want to say. And because Hollywood in these films was a lot darker, a lot more serious, a lot more suspenseful, whatever, than Wizard of Oz and some of the musicals of the period.
Well, it was wartime.
Wartime, and times change, and also lots of serious topics. And so that coined the phrase. And what we thought in this series with the films that we have, the Femme Fatale, the dangerous woman, which doesn't show up in every film noir, but in many of them it does. And it was a character that is, I think, we accept it now, and certainly film noir didn't invent this category.
No.
It was there, but they kind of developed it and brought it into, I guess you could say, the World War II and post-war period, where the woman, we know what Rosie the Riveter did during World War II, where the women went into the factories, the women took over on the home front, took on responsibilities far beyond what they had before. Well, then the men came back from the war. The women are just supposed to meekly go back to their place on the home front.
Yeah, that was a hard shift.
Yeah, that was a hard shift. In many cases they did, and that was shown in some movies. But film noir tended to reflect the fact that, once they've seen Paris, they can't go back to the farm. And I think a lot of these films, and we can talk about them individually, but the women are, they're not satisfied with just happy homemaker and that sort of thing. And not that there's anything wrong with that, as Seinfeld would say. It's
just for these particular women, it wasn't what they wanted to do.
And it reflected a part of society where people have different interests, and that was being shown in these films. So Double Indemnity, for instance, Billy Wilder, we kick it off with that one. Such a great film with a great cast. And Barbara Stanwyck defines the Femme Fatale. I love the fact that Fred MacMurray, who we now know years later was a Disney favorite, was the often absentee dad in My Three Sons. But certainly a G-rated guy.
Yeah.
And he's in this movie in 1944. It's quite something. And
that always strikes me.
And
of course, I love film noir, so these are films I've viewed frequently, but it always is a shocker to see him in that role and to do it so well. You were telling me a little bit before we started talking on air about the challenges of making movies in Hollywood during
and
the war.
I didn't realize it, and it was a book at the library, Sherry Bison's Blackout and Film Noir in World War II, I think is the full title. But I didn't realize that all the restrictions that Wilder had to work through in making this movie. Obviously, you had a code where you just couldn't show the things they show today, or you could have shown years later. They had to see the script. They approved the script. The code people did. So he was constantly revising back and forth. There were many letters went back and forth, or it was no email, but it was letters, or telegrams, or wherever they communicated. But a huge amount of correspondence went back and forth. You need to fix this, and Wilder would do something. Probably not all the way, but just to get it. I mean, one of the things you have to remember, and Bison's book brings this out, is that you're filming during World War II. In this case, probably in 43, the movie was released in 44.
Right.
So you had restrictions on where you could go to shoot. You know, you had to adhere to blackouts. You didn't have you just couldn't prance around and do anything you want. There's a great picture, probably a series of pictures, of when they filmed, and I try not to give any plot details away because I hate that when somebody's, you know, I remember my Apollo days, somebody storming out of one of our speakers and saying, he's telling me the plot of the movie coming up, I don't want to hear it. So I try not to do that, but there's a scene in there where they're in a quote-unquote supermarket. Well, we wouldn't call this a supermarket by today's standards.
Yeah.
This was the supermarket.
The corner store.
44. And in that picture, and it's not shown in the movie, but the pictures they took for publicity reasons, are a series of armed guards that were brought in because they filmed in the actual market. Fred MacMurray and Barbara Stanwyck having a sort of a little meeting, and there she's got sunglasses on and all this. Well, they didn't, when they were filming this, they didn't want any of the crew stealing cans off the shelf because of the restrictions. Shortages. So these guards were on duty. I don't think Fred was going to put a can of peas in his pocket, but you know, one of the gaffers or something might have tried to pull that. So you see things like that, and one of the movies we have on our list, Mildred Pierce. There's a scene in there where it's on the beach. Well, it's done at night. You could not go to the beach except with government permission in this area of California.
Well, sure, because it could be a landing.
Well,
for
the Japanese submarines were out there. You know, there was a big to-do about that when war first broke out, that Japan was going to invade the United States, and of course it hit California.
And for a humorous look at that, of course, you can watch 1941 with John Belushi, which is not film noir.
Yeah, it's also funny now, but of course at the time, you know, there was honest concern. There was panic early on.
Well, sure, and they had the Japanese internment camps. And people were terrified.
It was an upheaval. So with that as a backdrop, here we are filming movies, and I think the Mildred Pierce scene, not that anyone really needs to know this, but the Mildred Pierce beach house is the director's own house because he couldn't just get permission anywhere, so he used his own house for it, which is pretty nice when you see it. But so those are some of the things that go into the movies, and it's fascinating just to recount them.
I know you don't want to give away the plot, but can we give a little synopsis?
Sure.
What on Double Indemnity?
Double Indemnity, of course, by the title is insurance.
Yes.
And the wife, of course, Barbara Stanwyck, and her husband apparently are not all that close. So when she meets Fred MacMurray, the insurance agent, they hatch up a little scheme. Edward G. Robinson is very pivotal in this wonderful role for him. He plays Fred MacMurray's boss, and he's the guy that is the fast-talking insurance, I guess, overseer or district manager, and his role in this. Obviously, times have changed. Insurance is you know, like everything else. But it's fascinating to see the interplay between MacMurray and Edward G. because there's quite a relationship there, and it carries on throughout the movie, throughout the goings-on. And we should mention, well, I don't even want to say it because I'm giving away something, but there was an ending filmed that they never used, in fact, shows up on one of the posters that you can find online, you know, people are so inclined, that shows Fred MacMurray in a scene you don't see in the movie. But that's all.
That's interesting.
That's all
I
I'll
wonder
say
how
at
they
that point.
came up with that.
Well, yeah. Well, apparently they filmed it, they just didn't use it. So,
okay.
I think Billy Wilder was talked out of it as sort of as they often are when you're making these movies. Well, we did this, but we're not going to use it, or left on the cutting room floor, so to speak. So,
yeah. I imagine many people have never considered Fred MacMurray with Edward G. Robinson.
Yeah, it's unique, and I think he did make a couple of other movies that he was linked to with Kim Novak in another movie, kind of a film noir thing. In fact, it's a pretty good one. I can't remember the title right now, but I think your viewers will get it if you. Now you can always Google everything and it all
or
pops
go to
up.
Independent Movie
So it's easy for people like me
Database.
with forgetful minds. You can well, it's online somewhere. You can find it. But no, he and Kim Novak have quite the relationship, and he plays a policeman in that one. But he's a policeman that unfortunately gets turned. Yeah,
crooked
his
policeman.
head gets turned.
Oh, well, then we were talking about Mildred Pierce a little bit too. So can you
Mildred Pierce
give
is
us
great.
a short synopsis?
Sure.
of
Joan
this one?
Crawford is of course the big player there. She's the mom who gets the very popular restaurant. Anne Blythe is probably the femme fatale in this one. That's Joan's daughter.
Right.
Anne Blythe is not what you would call a grateful daughter. She gets all this stuff that Joan has worked so hard for in this restaurant, and she is just about the most spoiled brat you can find. So there's Anne Blythe in that one. It's a great movie in the sense of kind of carries through, I think it has a common theme for today where you can pull yourself up by your bootstraps and do all this stuff, but guess what? You turn around and you got a problem. And that's the case with Joan Crawford, and you see the movie, you'll understand it. And of course, that movie has been redone. I think it was on cable just a year or so ago, new version.
Yeah,
obviously.
I haven't seen the new version.
Didn't
but
see it either, but I know it has that
I know it's
feel.
out there.
Yeah, it's got a great appeal, and I think it's one of those, don't go by the title. You hear a title of a movie called Mildred Pierce, you think,
Good
what could
grief.
that be?
Yeah.
Well, it's a good movie.
Yeah,
It's a good one.
yeah. And oddly, I ran into a young person recently who told me, I just don't like to watch black and white movies. Which
You hear that?
was a shocker to me because I was like, what do you mean?
Well, I know, it's really silly in a way because, of course, those of us that grew up with black and white first and foremost, and then color was kind of a treat. I mean, that's how TV was.
Sure.
TV was all black and white, and then color came in like a big deal in the 60s. Those of us that went through that period look at black and white a little differently. It was like the original. Things were, like life was in black and white, and then color came along in the 60s. But I think once you get past that block, I think there is a block there where I'm looking at something that's old, that's not what I like or not what I'm used to. But I think once you get past that, you're into it, because there are certain movies, and I learned this at the Apollo when I would watch many black and white films. Third Man, which isn't in this collection, but could be a film noir collection, a film noir classic. I can't imagine that movie being made in color.
Yeah.
It has to be in black and white because of the stark nature of it. And you could say that about a lot of film noir, that has to be in black and white. But that's me.
Yeah.
Someone else could say.
Well, I think when they couldn't rely on so many special effects and couldn't rely on the color, a lot more had to go into just the acting and directing.
Right. And
they couldn't say things, and they couldn't show the extreme violence we show now, and
right.
It's
and there is something about black and white where, and again, maybe we're trying to find something to induce somebody to watch it where they shouldn't really need that, but there is a starkness to it, a quality that is there that allows you to maybe look at the character a little differently, and maybe that's not even conscious, but the lighting effects that are always a big part of film noir, they really use that heavily. You got tremendous. We don't always give them credit. The people that worked in the behind the cameras, setting that stuff up. There's a whole slew of them that were just top of their game in film noir.
Yeah, just absolutely.
And probably in
amazing
these
talent.
films that we're showing.
Yeah. And now all the talent seems to lie with people who can work the computers.
Right. Oh yeah. So it's gone full circle. Yeah.
Excuse me. Well, and then we've got the Postman Always Rings Twice.
This was the third time this movie was made. First in France, then Italy, and then in the United States, and the same story. And I should mention that the same author that wrote the original novel also wrote Mildred Pierce.
Ah, okay.
And his name
A Twisted Mind.
His name escapes me, but again, it's online, folks.
But these were both books to movies.
Both books to movies. So we got to mention books when we're doing a library show, right?
Yeah, and I didn't realize that they were both books. We talked about that a lot when we do Reader's Advisory at the library. If somebody likes, a movie that came out, a lot of times we'll have a book discussion, or we give people lists of books to movies, if you like this.
Oh.
Some people hate that. Some people if they've seen the movie, it better be just like the book, or they're
Right.
not going to do
Oh, yeah.
both. But
The debate goes on.
I like to see the interpretation between
Mm-hmm.
what someone does with a book and what they do with a movie, because to me they're two different forms
Absolutely.
of art.
Well, the timing too, because you've got about an hour and a half or whatever these movies run.
Yeah.
And The Postman Rings Twice is good. Lana Turner is
Yes.
maybe the ultimate femme fatale, because this was probably her greatest movie, at least by many standards. And she makes such a great appearance in it. And this was a woman who was, what little I read on it, just drop dead gorgeous from like moment she just arrived in anyone's life. I mean, 14 or whatever.
Yeah.
And was just taken up by the studio system and used in movies. And this kind of becomes her major movie. She went on to make many more movies, but this is the primary one. And you can tell why John Garfield gets all bent out of shape when he sees her. So this is a great movie. And I think, the storyline on this one is that you think it's over, and it's not.
Yeah.
You think it's over, and it's not. So that's all I'll say there, because it moves on through sort of like almost a sub-movie when you get into it. So that's always an interesting
Yeah, that's
part
what
of this.
struck me, because I hadn't seen it in a while, and I saw it recently,
you
and
go,
I was
"Hey,
like,
you-
wait, I forgot about this
I forgot
part.
about this part, yeah, which is always a good thing when you realize, oh, I can see movies more than once.
Oh, yeah.
So that's
yeah.
always good.
And that's what, if people say, oh, I've seen these over and over, I bet you were watching them at home and getting up and answering the phone and wandering off to do this or that,
Absolutely.
throw a load of laundry and let the dog out, answer the kids.
Right.
So very different to come and sit down and be absorbed in
Right,
a big
and you
room,
see it-
big screen.
I think when you see a movie from start to end in a theater,
Mm-hmm.
you really see it for the first time, because even though you may have done that before, and I've had interesting conversations with people that we ran, one of the sci-fi movies from the 50s
Oh,
at the
yeah.
Apollo. And I had somebody come up from the audience and say, I sat in that same seat and watched this movie in the Apollo in 1953 or whenever it was
How
released.
fun.
And this was like 5, 6, 7 years ago. But, they saw it again. I don't know what our 3D effects were like at that time, but this was, this is why you need to kind of sometimes come back and look at these older films. Not because they necessarily represent, anything close to what we do now. We have cell phones and smartphones and everything else, but still people, still relationships, still murder. It's all, some things don't change. You can take all the technology you want out of it, and that's the beauty, I think, of these films.
Yeah, as they tell the story and
They tell the
it
story.
well. Yeah.
And that story is kind of recurring. So
Well,
that's
so
it.
we've had the interesting experience when we've done Peoria Reads, where a couple times we've had classic books that people said, oh, I read that in high school, or I read that in
Right.
college. And we're like, no, read it again. And if you can convince them to read it again, they come away with such a different experience,
Right.
because, of course, they've got more life experience, but they're not being forced to read it and really find out why these books were classics, why you were asked to read them in school.
And not to besmirch our school system or anything big, but how many books were actually ruined by
Yes.
being force-fed, and then you spend a month or more on them in class every day.
Dissecting every single
then,
thing.
And then, when you try to resist that, you don't get a good grade.
Yeah, exactly. Well, our last movie in this series you're going to show is
Murder,
My Sweet,
which of course is
1944.
just a great one. This is Dick Powell is one of my favorites, and I think Dick Powell, who plays Philip Marlowe, which is probably one of the better
famous
known
detectives.
famous Sam Spade, Philip Marlowe. There are just a handful of great names there and of course Raymond Chandler wrote the book, which was Farewell, My Lovely.
Oh, okay.
And then it was adapted to Murder, My Sweet.
Okay. So another book to movie.
Another book to movie, and how faithful it is, I'm not sure. But I love Dick Powell. I love Dick Powell as an actor, both in TV, movies, but also on radio, because he's Richard Diamond on radio. And I listen to that now with the internet. You can get that. And I never heard it the first time around, but I'm hearing it the second time. And classic stuff. And he's able to be both serious and funny, which is a real tough thing. The key on this one is Dick Powell had been in the 30s a song and dance man.
Ah, okay.
All the movies, Gold Diggers of 1933, that's Dick Powell.
All those big stage
yeah.
panorama things.
Exactly, the Busby Berkeley classics and the girls dancing in formation. So Dick Powell's part of that. So how does he wind up as a hard-boiled detective in 1944? And another one I love in this is Mike Mazurki, Mike Mazurki plays the huge, burly guy that Dick Powell tries to help find his girlfriend. And Mike Mazurki, you will have seen, if you don't know him by name, you will have seen him in many movies because he always played the big tough guy, the boxer, the thug, the guy you didn't want to run into in any dark alley. So he's in this movie too. But Dick Powell's great and turned his career around with this movie and went on to play lots of detectives and tough guys, and kind of like some of our stars today who become action heroes when they were a member of a musical group before. So you can fit the names in there. But,
or they were on some Disney Club TV show.
Right, and then they become tough guys.
Which,
and once they become, that then they get all kinds of movie offers, and they can retire rich people. So,
yes, because Disney doesn't pay well, right? And you'll get the measles.
Oh dear.
So I don't think we actually gave a little synopsis of what happens in this one. I'm not as familiar with
Murder My Sweet is good because it's a little bit of a convoluted plot because it seems like Chandler, and The Big Sleep is another example of his work, the Humphrey Bogart movie, where no one, to this day, no one knows what that plot is really. And they asked him, and he didn't know, the author. So, sometimes...
I'm just telling a story here.
It's just sort of a winding crime pursuit story.
Okay.
That Dick Powell is you follow him. And one of the things that and I'm not revealing, I think, anything that's going to be concerned with the plot, but at one point he describes being knocked out. And it's one of the great descriptive passages in film. It's carried over to radio to some extent too, I've heard it, where he goes, I'm like falling into a deep, dark well, and then I was swallowed up by the darkness. And he describes this, he's knocked out, but he gives it such a theatrical, and the director and all that, that you really kind of, you understand a little better, instead of just being knocked out and then you fall to the floor, which of course happens to all these guys. They have heads of steel because they're constantly being hit on the head and they keep recovering. Whereas today we know that would not be good for your health, your memory or anything else. But that's kind of the plot here. He kind of wends his way around talking to different people in pursuit of this mysterious girlfriend that Mike Mazurki is looking for. So once he finds her, we'll let the viewers find that. And Claire Trevor is the woman in question, is the Femme Fatale. And it's really, I thought one of the better movies because it's got that great dialogue, back and forth, the punchy lines that have become almost passé. But this was when it was new or different. And
new
so that's
and
always
different,
good.
so it was something that really caught people's
You have to look at it that
attention.
way. When you see these films now, these many, many years later, you can say, you kind of roll your eyes and, here they are, tough guy detective or Mr. Quick with a quip.
Yeah.
Well, that was not standard at the time this movie came out.
Groundbreaking.
It was still going on. So you have to give it that sort of, a little leeway there and understand it's all
where
new.
it started.
Somewhere it had to start, and this is where it did.
Yeah, cool. Well, that's our schedule again there. But are you going to have speakers with any of these movies?
Actually, I'm probably
introductions.
Yeah, I may rope in a speaker or two. I haven't given them the good news yet. Some of these people, I won't mention names now, but I've got a line of folks I used at the Apollo and would use again. But I personally going to introduce the double indemnity because I thought that the stuff I learned from the Blackout book applies specifically to this movie, and we'll just kind of give that a little.
And you don't talk long. You're just talking.
No, I've learned 10 minutes, and you're
10 minutes, and
you're
that's
out.
it.
Yeah, people come to see a movie not to hear someone chatter, especially about the plot. No, you don't want to go there. But no, this would be background about how the movie was made and the problems that the director had to go through. Sometimes I think it would be better if we talked afterwards, but you don't want to do that either. People want to get up. They brush the popcorn off their lap and they're gone. Yeah. So we don't do that. But I think we won't give anything away. But it's an opportunity just to get a little background and really just celebrate the era of these films.
Well, get an opportunity to understand it, and we always enjoy things when we understand a little more.
And many of the people that at least have come in the past and maybe come to this one know more about the film than I do, and the series and everything else. So it's an opportunity to learn as well. So that's always good.
Yeah. Okay. Well, and I want to point out to you too, and to our listeners, that in March, in our gallery, which is just right upstairs, stop there on your way in or on the way out, we have an exhibit called Hollywood Through Its Posters. and it's a gentleman from Iowa, Mike Pipel. I think that's how you pronounce his name. And it's just great. Some of the things we've, posters like this we've been showing, but he's got a collection of originals that will fill the gallery.
Great.
And how fun to go and see all that, and at the same time you're getting, whoops, I did that wrong.
Well,
Same time you're trying to see film noir, it's great to be able to do that. And so he also is going to give a talk, and I believe, if I can find the right paper, that's going to be at North Branch on Monday, March 2nd at 6 p.m. at North Branch. And he's a connoisseur of classic films and film posters, and so the posters will be at Main Library, but then right at the beginning of the month on Monday.
And the movies.
Yeah, on Monday, March 2nd, you'll see that you can listen to him talk out at North Branch. But
That'd be good.
to see the movies in the gallery, here's our lineup. March 7th, Double Indemnity. March 14th, Mildred Pierce. March 21st, The Postman Always Rings Twice. And March 28th, Murder My Sweet. And those all start at 2.
2 o'clock on every Saturday in March.
And they're free.
Free.
Are you having popcorn?
Well, we should have popcorn. Yes, we haven't gotten all those arrangements, but we'll work on that.
But they'll be ready.
Yes,
Kevin.
we'll have something. We'll have something for
And
folks.
if you somehow still have not been to the new auditorium, I want to point out that we have lovely, comfortable seats.
Absolutely.
They are seats that our board members went to Chicago and sat in 500 chairs
Really?
and personally picked out, because they have to sit in chairs for a long time at meetings, these wonderful chairs that are very soft and comfortable. I mean, they're just like a woven web thing, but they are comfortable. Not like our old hard plastic ones you have to use to endure.
So come for the seats.
Yes, come for the
popcorn
seats and you'll be
come
comfortable.
for the movie.
Yeah, and of course, all free parking on Saturdays.
Right.
No need to worry about those meters. It's free parking. But thank you for joining me, Steve.
My pleasure.
And we're really excited to have you. If you need more on this, just check our website and all the details will be on there. And we'll see you next week on Information Please.